New York really stepped in it this time. Following the $350 million fraud ruling against Trump, truckers have announced that they will be boycotting loads delivered to the city. Now, I don't know exactly how big that could get. Maybe it's 10 truckers, maybe it's more. But considering the political leanings of many in the trucking profession, seems likely that this will have some kind of impact on New York City. We all remember the Freedom Convoy, the Freedom Truckers in Canada. The government was so shocked by what they were doing, they started freezing bank accounts and stealing money. And then, of course, there's the Colorado truckers boycott, where a man was sentenced to 110 years in prison after his brakes failed. A bunch of people who drive trucks said we're not going in that state. And then they were forced to reduce the sentence to 10 years. Now, I do want to talk about that case because it's pretty wild. But what we see here is that truckers are somewhat of an organized group. They lean pretty right, not completely. This may have a tremendous impact. But for those that aren't following exactly why this is happening, this has to do with Donald Trump's fraud ruling. And I'll give you the gist of that so you can understand. Donald Trump was accused of fraud by New York. They argued that he artificially inflated the value of his assets in order to secure better loans, more money. Yes, that's literally what all people do all the time, everywhere. It's not a crime. It's not fraud. It is normal. Seriously. Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, I looked it up. I guess his net worth is the tune of $500 million. He's not quite a billionaire, but he's a very wealthy guy, says this is insane. You're going to have to prosecute. You're going to have to go after every single real estate developer everywhere. So it's not just that truckers are boycotting, but Kathy Hochul of New York is begging developers like, please, everything's fine. You have nothing to worry about. Why? Because anyone who works in real estate is now going, holy crap, we are all guilty of fraud, and they are going to strip and steal our assets. Good luck, New York. Now, of course, if you're a regime ally or puppet, you probably have nothing to worry about, but this is the way the country is shifting. That is, if you're a regular old real estate developer, you're going to avoid New York. But if you're a Nazi, you're going to want to build in New York. And why do I say Nazi? Well, first, let's start with the gist of the claims against Donald Trump. Not only did they try to criminalize, or they're calling it a civil fraud thing, a standard business practice, Trump was not even given an opportunity to defend himself. That's correct. The judge in the case banged the gavel and said, summary judgment. I don't need to see anything. There does not need to be a trial. Trump is guilty. Now, the trial we are going to have is to determine whether or not he fraudulently altered documents and what's the damages. In this trial, they weren't allowed to actually claim Trump didn't do this. No, it was already determined by the court. You committed fraud. So this is shocking and wild. But here's why I say Nazi. I'm far from an expert, okay? But, when a lot of people were arguing about Nazis being socialists, I was like, okay, well, that would imply some kind of like left-wing economics. But then the left was like, they were not socialists. That's a lie. And so I was like, well, then which is it? I decided to fact check. So I read a couple academic papers, and I stress a couple, literally like 1.5. Okay, I'd say 2, but I didn't completely finish it because one of them was just, I read the economics portion and then stopped reading it. I don't want to read into like the other, like I'm not going to read down into like non-economic related issues pertaining to Weimar Germany and Nazi Germany. But the issue was this. What I read was, it wasn't socialist. It wasn't a command economy like the communists, but it may as well have been. There was private industry. You were able to build what you wanted and trade how you saw fit, but it had to be to the benefit of the regime. Well, interesting. Get it? If you are someone who is critical of the Nazi party, oh, you're in trouble. But if you supported the regime, well, then you were fine. They would come to a steel factory and say, you're not producing steel for the war effort? Well, we can't have that. And what would happen is people would stop trading with you. They'd say, look, I don't want any trouble. I don't want people coming and smashing up my businesses. I don't want to get into a fight with the government. I don't want the regulation. I'm not going to do business with someone who's persona non grata. So it was through social enforcement, ideological enforcement, everybody fell in line. And that's exactly what we see with cancel culture. People terrified to speak out against what they see as wrong because they're scared far leftists will smash their windows out, burn their buildings to the ground, destroy their dreams. And this is what we're seeing now in New York. Real estate developers going to get wise real quick. But this doesn't mean real estate will stop being developed. It means that allies of the Democratic Party who donate to the Democratic Party are going to be with smiles on their faces, developing, building, using the exact same techniques Donald Trump used. You want to know how you know the whole fraud trial was a fraud itself? They argued that Mar-a-Lago is worth something like $20 million. Okay, Mar-a-Lago is beachfront to beachfront property, something like 20 some odd acres. Neighboring buildings go for $20 to $40 million. How could Mar-a-Lago be worth less? Considering it's not just a property, but it's a business. At minimum, based on construction costs, dry real estate value. Imagine it was a flat parking lot. What would it be worth? You're looking at $500 million, maybe $300. But in reality, I think it's fair to say it's $1 billion entity, as Trump did. $20 million? Here's the game plan. What they're going to do, and I predicted this, and here we go. They are going to argue that Trump's buildings are not actually worth $500 million. They're worth $30 million, $20 million, like Mar-a-Lago. And they're going to do this in New York. They're going to say Donald Trump owes New York State $364 million. And when Trump doesn't pay, they're going to, first of all, they're not going to let him sell the buildings. They've already put bans on him serving as an officer. They've already forced his children to pay, and they're restricting his ability to do business. Considering this, what's likely going to happen is, let's say Trump's got a $500 million building. And he says, okay, I'll pay the fine by selling this building. Nope, you can't do it. We have suspended you. And who in their right mind is going to do a deal with Trump? They're going to be like, dude, no way. The machine's going to come after me. So what'll happen then is Trump will, if he doesn't pay, have to hand over assets. The state will seize the property. And what they're going to do is, the building's actually worth $500 million, by the way, as a business and as real estate. But they're going to say, no, it's worth 20. So that $350 million you owe us, we're seizing your building. And now you owe us $330 million. Even though Trump's net worth is to the tune of billions based on these buildings, I don't know that the buildings in New York are actually $500 million. Maybe it's $100 million or whatever. It could be $500 million. I think that's actually fair. But Trump doesn't own literally all of it, my understanding is. So it's not towards his complete net worth. But they'll seize it. And then they'll sell it off to a political ally. Now, what we're seeing with truckers, I think, will be very interesting because real estate developers are going to say, no way, we're out. Truckers are going to stop delivering. And I think it's interesting, but I do want to point out, as of this morning, truckers is trending on X to the tune of 300,000 posts. Everybody is hearing this message. It started with one guy who said, I'm on the radio all day, and all the truckers I hear are saying, we are not going to accept loads that go to New York City. We don't care. Okay. But it's also fair to say, maybe it has an impact. Maybe it drives up costs. Probably will, but competition exists. There are certainly going to be truckers who are younger and say, dude, I don't care at all about Trump. Everybody denied these deliveries, these loads. And so now the company's doubled the rate. I'll take it. Maybe. Or maybe truckers just boycott the city and the state in other means, in other ways. When we have this story, actually, I don't know if I pulled up somewhere. Here we go. From cloudtrucks.com. What happened with the Colorado trucking boycott? In this instance, this is a wild story, by the way. This truck driver, in over his head, 23 years old, his brakes failed, smoke was coming out, he burned him out, crashed, killed 4 people. He shouldn't be in prison at all. Sorry, he shouldn't be in prison at all. They gave him 10 years in the end. But he was initially sentenced to 110 years in prison. And a bunch of truckers stopped at the border of the state of Colorado and would not enter the state because they were like, I don't want to go to prison. Like if my brakes fail. You read the details of the story, and there are some people who argue this kid is guilty or whatever. And I'm like, I think the reality is he didn't know what he was doing. For real. I watched this video of a guy skiing. And he's going like 50 miles an hour, just blasting downhill, and he won't stop, and then slams into a bunch of people. And it's like, yeah, he didn't know how to stop. And so everyone's like, well, that's his fault. It is. But there's a difference between an accident and malicious attacks on people. And the point of prison is to protect us from violence. So we lock someone up. And also, there's some kind of retribution, punishment, rehabilitation, whether we get any of that. What is the purpose of locking someone up who was involved in an accident? It's simple. You lose your driver's license. That's how you prevent this from happening again. A guy who barrels down a slope and slams into people, you pull his pass and you ban him from coming back. He didn't intentionally do anything. You're not solving any problems. But the truck drivers just stopped. We're not going to the state. What happens if you get a bunch of truckers outside of New York, maybe at the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, wherever, and they just don't move and they say, I am not going to, and they jam up the tunnel. Oh, the cops can come in and be like, you got to move. And they'll be like, I ain't moving. You can tow it. Not my truck. What happens if truck drivers just stop? And then you get, I don't know, a truck gets stuck or something like this happens where they're like, I am not going to enter this city. I need to turn around. And then they don't deliver the loads. What happens if people just park on the side of the roads? And at the very least, if truckers do start boycotting New York, prices will go up for New Yorkers. I don't know that they care. There's a lot of wild stuff happening. I think this video from CNN is actually really important. And I want you to hear what Kevin O'Leary has to say. This is Kevin O'Leary talking about Donald Trump and what happened recently. Listen to this. It's 2 minutes long.
Well, let's leave out Trump for a minute and let's leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you could possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most, because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense. Now, look, I know Trump's got a lot of problems in other indictments and everything else, but this, if you're a real estate developer, you're watching this, you're saying, what is this? This is ridiculous.
I'd like to just point out to Kevin O'Leary, perhaps when you look to all the other indictments, you realize they are the exact same. I'd like to introduce you all who are not familiar to the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. This is a reference to this very scenario. You read the news in the newspaper, and let's say you're a real estate developer or a business mogul like Kevin O'Leary. I don't know if he's I think he's a real estate developer too, or he's an investor. I don't know what he does. And he reads a story and it says, Trump defrauded, here's how. You go, wait, what? That's not true. What is this garbage? These people are making stuff up. This makes no sense. You then turn the page and it says war in Syria. And you go, wow, I didn't know that. As if you have amnesia and forgot that the story you just read, for which you are the expert, was wrong. And that's the reality of news media. How could a journalist possibly understand the esoteric nature of any subculture or industry? I remember I went to the X Games. 20 years ago. No, yeah, like 18 years ago. And a friend of mine did a trick called a backside lip slide. Okay, that's what it's called. Backside is a reference to the direction you spin, and a lip slide is a trick. The newspaper wrote she did a backslide, and we all laughed. Now, to your average person who reads that, they are going to read about a woman who did a backslide. That's not a thing. Not a trick. Like maybe as a joke or whatever, but not a trick. So when I read the newspaper, I see that and I laugh. I know it's wrong, but I've long known that the media was full of it. To the average person, they don't. My point is this. For Kevin O'Leary to see this and go, this is nonsense. I know he's got other indictments, though. Bro, they're all nonsense. Are you kidding? 30 years ago at the Bergdorf, Trump walked into a building where he owned the hotel across the street, asked a woman to go into a dressing room that was for some reason unlocked when they're supposed to be locked. No one noticed. No one was there. She can't remember what year it happened. The dress she was allegedly wearing didn't even exist at the time. I still have the dress, she said. And then people looked up like that dress didn't exist. It wasn't made then. And then Trump apparently engaged in untoward activities to which the court ruled no, he didn't, but still held him liable anyway. Remarkable, isn't it? Maybe then you can look at it and say, all of this seems to make no sense. On top of that, you have now with Fani Willis, apparently she's accused of funneling money from the government to her boyfriend to pay for lavish vacations. Don't worry, though. She claims she paid it all back in cash she had lying around. That's right. Up to $9,000 in cash just lying around. Okay. I mean, maybe, I guess, but I don't believe it. And here we are today. Kathy Hochul tells businesses not to fear about Trump verdict. Nothing to worry about. Are you nuts? If you are a business, I can only tell you, you have to be insane to operate in New York. I mean, look, it was bad enough what we saw in 2020 with the COVID lockdowns, selective enforcement of shutting down businesses, unconstitutional orders, shutting down churches. Maybe it's what they want. Or maybe it's just dominoes falling over. I don't know. Perhaps it is just dominoes falling over one at a time. As the ideological capture happens, the regime expands their power. There is no resistance. And this is the direction things go. Now, certainly you can argue that there are people who want something like this to happen. And I say, yes, perhaps. But I don't know for sure. What I mean is, you get hyperpolarization. You get bifurcation of media with decentralized information and the creation of factions. Certain factions are more likely to win than others. Democrats run on demonizing Republicans in order to win power. Once this starts, and it didn't start with Trump, it started before Trump, it expands precipitously as more and more people are indoctrinated to one side or the other. Eventually, one regime has full control, like in New York or California. It's not so much that they intentionally expand their power. What I mean is they're not sitting there going like, how can we become more powerful? They're thinking, we got to get this guy because it'll help us win. So they do. You had Letitia James campaigned on I'll go after Trump because it's a popular ideological position. It works for her. She then goes after Trump. This results in more conservative-leaning individuals and Trump supporters to flee the city and the state. They do, which solidifies the ease at which these psychopathic politicians take those votes. Eventually, you get one-party rule. The fascinating thing is people talk about how we could become like North Korea. We are. North Korea is not very big. Let me do this. North Korea population. Let's try this. 25.97 million. Okay. North Korea area square miles. It is 541 square miles. Now let's do New York State population, which I think is comparable. A little bit less, 19.84 million, and New York State square miles. Let's do that. 54,556. Fairly comparable, right? It's a little bit bigger in landmass, 20%, 20 some odd percent less in population size. But it's one party rule. It's not like they're not going to gulag you because, in New York State, you can always just leave. And people are. But as they do, you will get a homogenous cult. You are going to get either people who are like, well, I don't like it, but I'll choose to live here and fund it through my tax dollars and through my expenses and all that stuff. But then you'll also get people who are just like, I love machine. And they're happy to watch all of this stuff happen. Well, I can tell you this. The benefit of the system we have right now is that you're going to get people who will not invest in New York. I just love the idea. If you're a bank, would you ever finance a loan in New York City ever again? You would have to be the stupidest bank on the planet. When the state says the business practice you engage in, look, there's no damages, there's no victims. Trump, my understanding is he has to pay the state. I want to make sure I get this one right because I'm pretty sure, but I don't have that story pulled up. I'm pretty sure it's a fine. Who's he supposed to be paying? No one is above the law. Politico. Let's make sure we get all the details correct here. Combined with a $5 million penalty, I'm pretty sure it's to the state. A civil fraud trial, $354.8 million Friday, barred him from running a business. The verdict and the ruling, yeah, there's no victims. He's got to pay E. Jean Carroll in another case, but yeah. So you're a bank. There's no victims. The victim's not you. You finance a building. The state could seize Trump's buildings, or at least his interests in those buildings. And then you as a bank are now in business with the government. Look, man, West Virginia is calling. We got a lot of property. It's not super expensive. There's a lot of people fleeing New York. I say, let's build up West Virginia. Go to timcast.com, become a member. Why? We got this event coming up March 5th. That's right. March 5th, live in Martinsburg, West Virginia. We're going to be building anti-Times Square. Maybe in 10 years, there will be a hustling and bustling downtown strip in Martinsburg. That's the plan. It's very difficult, but we're working on it. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're gonna not play these dirty games. And so the people who are fleeing New York, they can come on down. You're a bank, you're an investor. Come on down to West Virginia. We're going to start building up the Panhandle. We're going to start working towards building up Appalachia. It's mountainous. It's a challenge. I get it, but we're here. And New York's not the place for business. New York is the place where you give a loan to somebody, even if everything's normal, the government could seize it, take it away, or destroy the business. I mean, look what they're doing to the Trump organization. The Trump organization's got creditors, and they owe money to a lot of people. Imagine being someone who went into business with Trump right now, and you're going, what is happening? Well, assuming you're not a moron, you're also realizing it wasn't Trump. Trump made you money. Trump did everything right. No, it's the state. You go into business in New York and someone pisses off the government, they will destroy your business deal. Not interested, my friends. That sounds like a terrible prospect. And this is why Kathy Hochul's saying, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Oh, because they're worried about it. It's truly fascinating to see all of this break down. I don't know exactly how they think they can continue to operate, but here's one possibility. You've got this video where this hotel, what is it? They show the name of it. This is the Row Hotel, 1,331 rooms. The government is paying for all of it. I wonder, federal government? It's migrants that are inside of it. They shut the hotel down to the public. It's a luxury hotel. This is your future. You will be a serf and a slave. You must divest from New York to the best of your abilities. To the best of your abilities. And I know it's the easiest thing for everybody, but the risk of operating in New York is too great right now. So I'm going to say this right now. I understand. It is not so easy to just do. I get it. But this is a serious impact on everybody. And so I hope y'all understand. Cast Brew Coffee, our distributor is New York based. And we chose this distributor because they are politically, they're in a moderate area. I suppose then I should pose the question to all of you, and that is, do we seek to relocate, find a new supplier, which could, basically changes all of the products we've already formulated and created? Or do we stay and fight, right? We're not taking loans on anything. It's just a business in slightly north in New York, and they're really, really great. And I would say politically they're on our side. But it's a challenge, isn't it? I have a lot of people who tell me, when I say, get out of the cities, they say, no, abandoning them expedites the corruption and the collapse. Okay, fair point. Maybe the issue is then don't give out loans in real estate, but find other ways to push back. The government could seize your assets. I don't know. A lot of people tell me you should get out, you shouldn't do business, put your money where your mouth is. Okay, done. I'm willing to do it. Then I get yelled at because people are like, don't abandon it. We need to support businesses that are pushing back and provide resistance. That's a challenge, isn't it? You know, the people we do business with for our coffee distribution, they're good people. Politically, I would say on our side, very defensive and resistant to these forces. What do we do? What do we do? I don't think abandoning them is the right thing. It's tough, isn't it? I do think perhaps in the future we have to just build our own roaster or something like that and build it in West Virginia. But I do want to be reasonable, because if people think it's the appropriate thing to do, we will immediately switch off. We will find a new distributor. I also fear just abandoning our current distributor is not the best course of action, especially when they are pushing back against cancel culture. But it's a reality. And so you can comment, let me know what you think. I don't think there's any easy answers to any of this. What I can tell you is New York is deeply corrupt, and the ruling against Trump should be a red flag to anybody doing business there. And I don't know what to do. I don't have any good answers, because my personal preference, of course, is always just shut it down, right? But I don't know. You guys tell me. And we'll figure it out. I mean, Casper's been extremely successful. And we chose this operator out of New York, this distributor, specifically because they are moderate-leaning resistance, essentially, to the political regime in New York. I shouldn't say it like that, but I mean, like, I took a look at the areas. There are a bunch of other, and I was like, these guys are like moderate, and they don't like cancel culture, and they defend their clients. They're good people. I don't want to let them down. They're good people. I guess these are the difficult questions we have to figure out with what New York is doing. Suffice to say, it may just be a major impact to everybody. If truckers stop delivering to New York, then it won't matter. How will we actually produce and deliver our coffee if that's the case? Man, I don't know. It's not so easy, is it? Right? For me personally, we divested and we moved, and we did it again. I was in the New York area. I said, I'm out. This is nuts. The riots were crazy. The violence was crazy. I went to Jersey. I said, Jersey's crazy. I went to South Jersey. I said, this is crazy too. After COVID, I'm like, I can't keep supporting these states. I made the mistake of going. We went to the tri-state here in Western Maryland, and while the county is great, they want us to secede and join West Virginia. Doubt that'll happen, but they want to. 3 counties do. I made the mistake of setting up in Maryland. Didn't understand. I was naive and I made a mistake. But now we are soon to relocate 100% of operations into West Virginia. We've relocated a large portion of our operations already into West Virginia, but we've been waiting on construction for the new studio to complete. And it is now done. The only thing we're waiting on is the skate park. And there's knickknacks like, putting a table in the kitchen area and putting up the TV on the wall. Yeah. That stuff takes like an hour. But we're waiting for the skate park construction, so the full facility will be done. And then we're West Virginia 100%. And then we are building out production in Martinsburg, West Virginia. We've got big calls and big plans. We are working on expansion for Cast Brew. It's all in the works. I can't say too much more. But the expansion for multiple locations, we are planning all of that. And I would say we're doing the best we can. Far from perfect, but the best we can. I think we just have to do it, right? Start focusing on the parallel economy, which we've been doing, and it's been successful. I think we may not need to react to rashly right now with New York, because it seems like Kathy Hochul and the New York state government has just set themselves on fire. This ruling could be a massive detriment to development in the state, which it'll turn New York into a low-income state, from the richest to the poorest. If people start shutting down real estate development and they're trying to cram illegal immigrants in there and people are fleeing, what's their industry going to be? Nothing. They'll have nobody to tax. It's going to turn into what New York was in the late 70s and the 80s. A lot of crime, buildings falling apart. Trump is credited with, in many ways, helping save the city. Not just Trump, but Giuliani and many others. Trump brought back luxury. So be it. New York, you reap what you sow. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.